We're now getting some more breaking news on the broadcast. Now, on whether US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi will be able to control threats from China, Indian Overseas Congress Chief Sam Pitroda now has said on that question, and I'm quoting from his statement, "I don't understand the threat from China. I think this issue is often blown out of proportion because the US has a tendency to define an enemy, and I believe the time has come for all nations to collaborate, not confront. Our approach has been confrontational from the very beginning, and this attitude creates enemies, which in turn garner support within the country. We need to change this mindset and stop assuming that China is the enemy from day one. It is unfair, not just to China, but to everyone." Unquote.
Don't know what is the threat from China. I think there is always this thing blown out of at times proportion because US has the habit of defining an enemy. I think time has come for all of us to really network nations and not have confrontation. Our attitude is that of confrontation from day one. And that attitude creates enemy, and that creates certain support in the country. I think we need to change that pattern. To assume that China is the enemy from day one, it's just not fair, not just to China, but to anybody.
Let me take this across to my colleague Aman Sharma, who's now with us on the broadcast. Aman, considering it's Sam Pitroda, of course, this is a comment that is going to be blurted out and a controversy will be drawn in, considering he is, in a sense, batting for China. But it is a perspective and it needs to be dissected as that. What is the BJP and in turn the Congress really saying in defense?
Well, see, the BJP is still to react on this, but, the kind of controversial comments that Sam Pitroda is known to make at, various occasions, this latest statement where he's saying that China should not be assumed as an enemy from day one. It is unfair not just to China, but to everybody. We should not have a confrontationalist approach, but not have a confrontational approach, but a more like a, collaborative approach, and otherwise we will create enemies. This statement, if you put it in context, the 1962 war with India, what happened with the Galwan Valley in 2020 when our, brave men from the army lost their lives in this conflict with the Chinese forces. If we go back to, the so-called China-Pakistan boundary agreement signed way back in 1963, Pakistan had illegally ceded about 5,180 square kilometers of Indian territory to China, and government, has never recognized the so-called Pakistan-China boundary agreement of 1963. Indian territory under occupation of China and the Union territory of Ladakh is approximately 38,000 square kilometers, and that dates back to the era of the Congress and Jawaharlal Nehru. So I think all these things need to be put into context when a country needs to be described as an enemy or a friendly nation, and it's a matter on record. And India has fought a war with China. India had a violent skirmish with China in 2020. So calling Sam Pitroda now saying that you should not assume China as an enemy from day one, it's unfair to China, would be something that the BJP won't really, appreciate coming from the words from the mouth of Sam Pitroda yet again.
Also, Aman, the fact that if we also look at the Russian context, exactly the same thing happened with Russia, where Russia went against the Western world and the war against Ukraine was in fact claimed as Russia's fight against the West. Now, when it comes to China, are they not making another superpower out of China unless it already is? And Sam Pitroda is underlining that very fact.
Well, absolutely. The dynamics surely have changed since Donald Trump has become the U.S. president. Prime Minister Modi's trip to the U.S., we saw this reaction coming from China through the Global Times article saying that China was not happy with this increasing closeness between India and the USA. So, of course, that factor has always been there. But we should also realize that this peace with China, in a way, the negotiation which has happened with China on the border has also come after a long diplomatic range of talks, so lasting over 4 years. And things had really gone south after the Galwan clash. So I think the larger picture is that to paint China, that China is not an adversary of India, or that we are creating a confrontational attitude with China, something that Sam Pitroda is hinting at, is something that will not go down well with the government or with the BJP.
Right. Aman, may I request you to please stay on with us? We are now, in fact, getting a BJP reaction. Here's Pradeep Bhandari, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party, responding to these recent statements that have been made on China by Sam Pitroda.
हिंदुस्तान के स्टेट के खिलाफ लड़ना चाहते हैं। राहुल गांधी आज चीन के एजेंट के रूप में कार्य कर रहे हैं, इसीलिए उनके राइट हैंड सैम पिट्रोडा हमेशा से चीन की बड़ाई करते हैं। 2008 के सीक्रेट एमओयू जो कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी ऑफ चाइना और कांग्रेस पार्टी ने किया था, अभी तक उसके डिटेल्स सार्वजनिक नहीं किए गए हैं। गांधी परिवार ने डोकलाम के वक्त में भी राहुल गांधी ने सीक्रेट मीटिंग चाइनीज एम्बेसडर के साथ में करी थी। राहुल ने अपनी पूर्व स्पीच में भी 34 बार चीन का जिक्र किया था, भारत से ज्यादा। आज ये सैम पिट्रोडा के बयान से स्पष्ट हो चुका है कि राहुल गांधी चीन के एजेंट के रूप में कार्य करते हैं, चीन को बैक करने का प्रयास करते हैं। ही बिलीव्स मोर इन द चाइनीज इंटरेस्ट देन द इंडियन इंटरेस्ट। तभी हम कहते हैं कि राहुल गांधी इज नो लॉन्गर रनिंग अ पॉलिटिकल ऑपोजिशन, ही इज रनिंग एन एंटिटी विच वांट्स टू फाइट द इंडियन स्टेट। उनका रिमोट कंट्रोल जॉर्ज सोरोस और चीन के हाथ में है।
Let me take this back to my colleague Aman. Aman, unexpected lines, there comes the BJP statement, and it so happens that Sam Pitroda has given it to them on a platter yet again. First, Rahul Gandhi was a British agent, now he's a Chinese agent, and that's what the Bharatiya Janata Party is saying.
Well, absolutely. As we were talking about earlier, BJP will attack Sam Pitroda's statement, link it back to Rahul Gandhi. And if we see Rahul Gandhi's statement in the Lok Sabha recently while he was we were speaking on the motion of thanks to the president in the just concluded parliament session. Then also the BJP had attacked Rahul Gandhi for praising China so what in his speech and mentioning China various times during his speech, trying to say how the China had become a superpower, how the China was ahead in some aspects than India, and India needs to catch up, and BJP attacked them as well. I think they will link Sam Pitroda's statement now to Rahul Gandhi's statement in parliament and say how the Congress party has always been batting for China, be it that in famous MOU they had signed many years back with the Chinese authorities, or now when Sam Pitroda is saying that China should not be seen as an adversary and we should not have a confrontationalist approach with a country like China.
Also, Aman, do put it in context. Where was Mr. Pitroda really speaking when he made this statement?
Well, I think it's an interview which INS, the news agency, has carried. The INS has put out this tweet where he was speaking, I think, to INS and speaking on various other issues as well. But this is a particular comment he made on China when he was asked about U.S. President Donald Trump's comments lately and the Prime Minister visit to the USA.
Right. And are we expecting any sort of a defense from the Congress party? I know I've asked you that question, but considering it's Sam Pitroda and BJP is quick to jump to the gun when it is about controversies that could be associated with Mr. Pitroda really making certain bold statements or controversial ones at that, do you think the Congress will come to his defense?
Well, Sam Pitroda's comments have usually put the Congress in a fix in the past as well. I remember when the Congress had disassociated from certain comments of his, calling it as his personal opinion. We have to wait to see what Congress says on this particular comment, because they've been under attack on this China issue repeatedly. So will they back him or will they just stay quiet and steer clear of the issue? We'll know in a few hours if the Congress would want to react.